Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Here's another week in review, and I think it'll be a pretty short one. First, in terms of editing, I don't think I have done any editing this week of Arabian Dawn. If I did, it was probably just a page or so just not much editing, not a priority right now. Next, reading. This is the only book I don't think I've read anything of, Sherlock Holmes. I'm reading The Sign of Four. I'm on the final chapter, and kind of the main reason I've delayed a bit is because the final chapter is pretty long. It's like 15 pages or so, and that's the case with the first Sherlock Holmes book. Most of the chapters are like 3 or 4 pages, but then he gets to the final chapter and it's kind of like a tell-all reveal, and it's like 15 or 20 pages or something like that. So it's just kind of tedious, like and it also like changes the focus to show like the backstory of sort of why the killer did what they did or whatever. And even though I guess that should be a highlight of the book, I don't like it because it shifts the point of view from Sherlock Holmes to the murderer, and it's a real long chapter. So it's just like, okay, like at the final 85% of the bookmark or whatever, the book just transitions like completely to another character, and then maybe the very end, like the final 2 pages, Sherlock Holmes comes back into the book. So I don't really like that, how he just like, you know, takes the focus away from Sherlock Holmes. Personally, I'd say he would have been better off like having Sherlock Holmes like actually interview that person at the end and get the story out of them, rather than just like cutting to this like past scene or whatever and just showing like 15-20 pages of what led up to all of this. So I don't know, that happened in the first book. I didn't really like it, and I see it's about to happen again in this book, so that kind of has me thinking like, ugh, I'm not really prepared to read this. Next, so I read another chapter of A Gentleman in Moscow, and what happens in this chapter is the guy goes to a restaurant and just sits down to eat, and it's talking about how the restaurant managed before the communists took over and how it's going now. And then there's this scene where this girl like sits down and questions the guy about, you know, what life was like before the revolution and all that, and whether he knew any princesses and all that. And just the character of this guy, his attitude, it's just such a charming scene and all that. Like, he's just such a charming guy, and I don't know, it's just a real warm story kind of, and I don't know like where it's going from here and if it's going to be able to sustain all that, but really that chapter again just has me thinking I am probably going to have to rate this at least at minimum 4 stars. But if it can kind of sustain it all the way through, this is a 5-star book. Kind of my concern with that is I'm making slow progress on it, and it's a pretty big book. So I'm just thinking I may get to a point where I decide I like the writing very much, I like the character, I like everything about it, but at the same time, I don't really feel a supreme desire to keep reading it. Like, oh, I need to read the next scene. Even though I'm liking everything I read, I don't know, there's just something about it that doesn't really make me crave to read it. Like, it's a great book. I think it's great writing. It's a warm, cozy, charming story or whatever. But yeah, do I really feel like, ooh, I need to plow through all this book this week? Not really. So my conclusion of the book may wind up simply being like, I really like it, but I just don't want to keep reading it because I've been reading it for months by that point, and I'm only, you know, 20% in by that point or whatever, 30% in, and if I just try to keep reading, it'll take me a year to read this. So I don't know, it's just a book that's taken me a long time to read. So that may kind of wind up being a reason why I give up on the book if I do. But basically, based on the writing itself, beautiful writing, beautiful story, just beautiful characterization and all that. So yeah, quite impressed with it. Probably at least giving it 4 stars. Next, I read another chapter as well of, I think, Robert A. Heinlein's Starship Troopers. What happened in the last chapter was, oh, actually, this was quite good, I think. It's talking more about discipline stuff because one of the, like, recruits wound up sort of just like running away from the base, and then he committed murder. He murdered a girl or something, and so they brought that guy back and executed him. And what Heinlein is talking about in this chapter is about how basically it could go on for a while, but basically about how the youth need discipline, and how at some point basically society chose to start just showing empathy and giving people free passes on things. And as a result, people grew up without any sense of discipline. So they just committed crimes because they never had any consequences for it. You know, they never got spanked basically. And society never spanked them for acting out. And so as a result, they're just out of control. They think laws don't apply to them, and they're just, doing awful things. And really reading this book, this chapter especially, it made me think a lot about society today, because we see this so often, like people who have been arrested 20, 25, 30 times, whatever, and they're still doing crimes, and then they wind up just like stabbing someone on a train, or setting someone on fire, or pushing someone onto train tracks or whatever, and these people have been arrested 20, 30 times. And it's like, the reason they are not doing this is because they've just been taught through all their life that they never face consequences for anything. They get arrested and then they immediately get released. They commit a crime and the charges are dropped. And this is just happening so much in society, I think, where Heinlein is talking about this, and he's saying basically that in the past, in this book, the American Republic kind of collapsed. And the reason he said it happened is because of this, because we quit enforcing laws, because we quit spanking children, essentially, because we quit like hitting people when they were misbehaving, So people just thought, oh, I'm going to do whatever I want and I'll never have to face the consequences for that. And so society crumbled because people were committing crimes. It was not safe to go out in public. It was not safe to go to the park because you could get killed by all these like delinquents and everything. And basically, that's how it is now. People just going on a jog, and for some reason, someone who's been arrested 20 times just decides, oh, I'm going to stab that person to death. No reason whatsoever. I don't know that person. I have nothing against that person. I'm just going to do it just because. And that's really happening in society today. And so it's kind of like, Heinlein is talking about that. He's saying why this is happening is because, well, the way he says it is because we quit spanking people, kind of. And so really, even though this book has kind of been much maligned for that, like people thinking, oh, this guy is going overboard. He just wants people to be whipped in public is basically how they're viewing the book. And that's kind of what happens in the book. Like he talks about public lashings and all that, which seems really barbaric or archaic or whatever. Like, ugh, public lashings? That's extreme. But at the same time, looking at society today, it's like, yeah, these people probably need it. These people being arrested 20, 30 times and they're just immediately released from jail. Their charges are just immediately dropped. They need to have serious consequences for this. People need to understand, oh, this is not acceptable behavior. Like if I talk back to a police officer, they could kick the crap out of me and nothing will be done to them. They are in perfectly like justified to do that. If I lash out, if I resist them, whatever, they're going to beat the crap out of me. They're going to smash my teeth in. And if we had something more like that, people wouldn't be acting this way, I think. So it's kind of getting to a point where I'm thinking like, ugh, I mean, maybe we do need something more like this in society, where people do need to have the crap kicked out of them when they're acting so out of control like this. They need to face actual serious consequences, because otherwise they're just going to keep doing this stuff until they wind up stabbing someone on a train or setting someone on fire or pushing someone onto a train or whatever. This is actually all stuff that's really happening in society today. And what's happening? The people are just immediately being released from jail or their charges drop. Even after they do stuff like killing someone, it's just like, okay, we're going to give you a bond and just let you out again. back onto the street. It's insane. So yeah, it kind of has me thinking reading this book that I can't say he's really wrong about this. I mean, he's describing everything that's happening today and why, because we've quit disciplining people, so they just think I don't have to face any consequences for my actions. And as a result, we're having all this insanity about people committing crimes, being arrested 20, 30 times, and they just get off free. And so what do? They keep committing crimes. So yeah, reading this book, especially this last chapter, it just had me thinking, oh my gosh, I think this guy's actually kind of right. Anyway, so yeah, there's that chapter. Enjoying it pretty well. Next, I've read a couple chapters actually, or a couple stories of Milan Kundera, The Book of Laughter and Forgetting. So I previously mentioned how I read the first story in this book, and the first story was kind of something about a character who's growing up, or not growing up, but they live in I think it's the Czech Republic, and he's talking about how the communists, control the country and kind of the persecution they're undergoing or whatever, and just sort of how it's a police state, like this guy is being followed. And I thought it was just really quite well written, and so I liked that pretty well. And so I kind of thought this entire book would be about growing up or living under communist governments or whatever, and I think it might kind of be that. But the next two stories, I think, were not really too much if at all about communism. I believe, I'm not sure about that, but one of the stories, I forget which one came first, but one of them was quite a sort of erotic story. There was a ton of stuff going on about sex. Like there's this threesome kind of thing going on where, I don't know, where these children of this woman, I don't know exactly what happens. But yeah, it's a lot sort of dealing with sex, which I didn't really like. But at the same time, reading the story, I'm just like, damn, this is just well written and everything. It's just quite flawless. It's quite beautiful and all that. Even though I'm not too much into that type of story, I still think like this is just really well done. Oh, actually, there was only that one story I read. So yeah, it was the story kind of about this threesome relationship that's going on. So yeah, that's the one story I read this past week. And so yeah, anyway, not exactly my cup of tea, but still I think it's well written, and I really don't have a problem with it from a writing or storytelling standpoint. It's just pretty well done. So again, this book is probably heading toward, I would say, at least a 4-star rating, possibly 5-star. The only thing that kind of keeps it from being 5-star for me is, I don't know, I just don't really feel like this is a book I would recommend to everyone. It's just a book that I think is really well done. The writing is pretty solid. But who would I really suggest go read this? I'm not sure if I would really do that or not, which I think for being a 4 or 5-star book, that should kind of be the case, where I would want to tell people hey, read this. But for this book, it's kind of more like if you're looking for something to read and you can't find anything else, and especially if you don't mind reading short stories, I think it's a perfectly good thing to try. Give it a try, pick it up. Of course, this is the only book I've read by him so far, so I can't speak about his other books. But I think this is it's a book off the top 1000 list, so it's kind of one of his better known books, maybe his magnum opus, I don't know. But yeah, I think it's good enough where if ever, for whatever reason, if this guy comes up in conversation, I would at least say yeah, I've read his book and I liked it pretty well. I like his writing. I think he's a good writer. I think he's a good storyteller, kind of. So just all overall good impressions. So from that standpoint, it would be a recommended read. But would I really pick this book out of everything? Like if someone comes and asks hey, of all the books in here, what should I read? This would probably not come to mind even within the top 10 or top 20 or whatever. So that's why I'm thinking it probably wouldn't be something I'd really highly recommend, but I'd still say I think it's a good book. I think it's good writing and all that. So positive impression of it. The only other thing I really have to talk about would be my writing. Now, I plan to actually do another video, and I think I'm going to do a drunk video again because I kind of want to talk about AI a bit because, well, I'll talk about that in that other video. So if you want to check that out, I'll probably post it after this one. But yeah, so I don't want to talk much about that here. Basically, all I will say is that yesterday I wrote 2 chapters of Babylon Dithers, the book I'm currently working on, the 6th Trevor Knight book. So I wrote 2 chapters. That went really good. The 2 chapters were actually not anything I had on my outline. So I wrote 1 chapter about the satire team pinned down in Mosul. They're a counterterrorism group pinned down in a refinery. And so I wrote a chapter with them, and then I wrote another chapter with Trevor. Basically, he meets this Iranian general, and they kind of talk before Trevor is about to go on this weapons delivery for the Iranians, bringing some weapons to the Kurds in Iraq. And so they just have kind of a talkie scene, which again, I did not plan that at all. It was not in my outline. So I think all of that is good. So anyway, I think that's it for my writing. In terms of personal stuff, I don't really think I have much to say. The video game I've been playing most recently, I guess I've mostly been playing NBA 2K, playing my Seattle Sonics Dynasty, and I thought I was playing another game as well. Oh, I've been playing a game called Empire of Sin, which is really quite I don't know how to say it. It's not a very popular game, but it's a game before it came out, I was really interested in it because it looked real cool. Basically, you control a sort of a mob empire during the Prohibition era, like in Chicago during the ban on alcohol. So you can basically run an empire where you can like open up speakeasies and breweries and brothels and casinos and stuff, and you can fight with the other mobs and everything. Like Al Capone is a character in that game. You could either play as him or against him. So I really actually like that game. It's pretty fun for me, but that game has actually gotten really terrible reviews because when it first came out and for several years, there was a lot of glitches in the game. So it was kind of considered a bugged game, a broken game, and the developers weren't fixing it. So it was kind of like a game where the developers abandoned it. But I checked on it like a couple of years ago to see if there's been any updates on that game, and there actually had been. So I went ahead and got the game again. I used to have it years and years ago. So I got the game, and so far I think I've encountered one glitch that crashed my game, but otherwise it's been working perfectly. So I really like that game. I think it's pretty fun. So that's another game I've been playing recently. Otherwise, I don't think there's really much I have to say. The Mariners are playing. They're kind of being mediocre, so I'm not really too into that. There's a lot of talk that there's going to be an expansion in the NBA, so we could get word soon that this basketball is coming back to Seattle, which I think would be kind of pretty cool. I like that. Like I say, basketball is probably my favorite video game to play. And also in terms of like knowledge, I think I know more about basketball than I do about any other sport now. I used to be more of a baseball fan. Like when I was 10 to 15 years old or so, baseball was my thing, and I knew like all the players like ever. I knew all the statistics and everything. But lately, like in the past 10, 15 years or so, I've been more into basketball, so that's more the sport I know. Like with baseball, I could probably like not really even name like 3 of the last like 20 Cy Young Award winners or MVPs. I mean, I'd know Shohei Ohtani must have won some stuff, and then maybe like Aaron Judge. But after that, I just don't really know anything. Like I can't name the best player for the Cleveland Guardians, the Cincinnati Reds, the Baltimore Orioles. it's just a blank. Like I have no clue. Which when I was like 10 years old or whatever, I knew all of them. But now it's kind of the reverse where I know basketball a bit more. Not so much like every player, especially in the modern day, like currently, but from like 1950s to 2010s or whatever, I know pretty well the great players of each team and all that. So anyway, yeah, I'm just kind of really interested in basketball, which is just kind of weird because baseball used to be more my thing, but now it's kind of basketball is a little bit more my thing. I think the way I work is between all the sports, I would most want to watch football on TV. That's the only sport I really watch on TV would be the Seahawks, and that's really the only team I care about. If another team is playing, I'm just not interested, not even the Super Bowl. For baseball, I only care about the Mariners, but I don't even like watch them, and I don't even try now because it's so hard to find them on TV that I just don't watch. I really have only probably watched one game maybe in the last, I don't know, 10 years. As far as going to games in person, of course, the Mariners would be my number one pick. I've gone to a lot of Mariners games in my life. I've never gone to a Seahawks game. In a way, though, one of the sports I actually most liked, I've only gone to one game, but the Seattle Sounders, which is soccer or football, as purists would say, that was really fun. That was really intense. I loved actually going to that game. So that was my only time going to the Seahawks football stadium and just seeing like the noise, even though it was only like a third filled because of the soccer stadium. Like all the upper level seats are all closed off at the time, I think. But it was just really a neat experience to see that. And I think we won like 5-0 or something. So it was a really exciting game. The Sounders scored like within the first 12 seconds or something like that. So it's just a good game to go to for my first game. Oh, but probably my number one sport to actually attend is hockey because I go to quite a few Everett Silvertips games. I've only been going to like one game per year in the recent years. But a few years ago, around 2018 or so, I went to probably close to 10 to 15 games a year. So I knew all the players very well. Now I don't really know them very much. I think they're actually in the playoffs right now, and I think they're doing pretty good. But the one game my dad and I went to this year for the Everett Silvertips, they lost like 6-0 or something like that. Or maybe it was like 7-1 or something. It was just a blowout. And before then, they were like 10-0 on the season. And then we go to the game and they just lose like 7-1. It was just such a dreadful game that it kind of scared us away from going to any other games this year because it was just so bad. It was like, ugh, I don't want to go to another one of those games. So yeah, that kind of took some of our enthusiasm out for hockey. I have been to one basketball game, one Sonics game, which I'm really quite enthusiastic now about because the game I happened to go to was Houston Rockets at Sonics, and one of the players playing for the Houston Rockets at the time was Hakeem Olajuwon. So I'm really glad that the one NBA game I happened to attend, it was Hakeem Olajuwon in the Houston Rockets. So that is just so cool for me to like have known that I actually saw Hakeem Olajuwon play live. I don't really remember it very much at all. I just remember like one moment of the game or whatever. And Hakeem got 5 blocks in that game. He was already the NBA career block leader at the time. So yeah, I got to see him have a 5-block game, which is just kind of cool as well. Gary Payton was also playing for the Sonics, so that's cool that I got to see him, just a Sonics legend, and he had a real good game as well. He had 35 points and 15 assists, which I just imagine has got to be one of his better games ever, and so I just happened to see that game, so he had a phenomenal game. Also, what's cool about that game is an old Patrick Ewing played for the Sonics, so I got to see him as well. Just a legend. At that time, he was pretty much just an old man and a shell of his former self, but at least I got to see him. And yeah, so that's cool to me that I at least got to see those legends, Gary Payton, Patrick Ewing and Hakeem Olajuwon. I wish I could have seen players like Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson. I think I was a bit too young for Larry Bird, but Kobe Bryant, John Stockton, who's kind of my favorite player ever. You know, I've never seen LeBron, I've never seen Steph Curry, I've never seen Jokic, whatever. So the only ones I've really seen are Gary Payton, Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon. But to see those three in just one game, that's pretty cool, I think. So to kind of get back to why I mentioned this, the Sonics may be getting or Seattle might be getting the Sonics back. We might hear about that within a few months. So that'd be kind of cool. What I'd kind of wish though is I wish all of the Seattle teams would move out of state. Like I wish they would move to Boise, Idaho. I don't live there. But if all these teams were to go there, I think all the Seattle fans would kind of go with them, because Washington State is just such a terrible state now because of all the politics. It's just basically the state is destroyed because of politics. It's a beautiful state. It'd be probably my favorite state in the country just based on the scenery and everything. And I've been to somewhere close to like 30 states, maybe more. And Washington State is just so beautiful compared to all the other states. So it's a beautiful state. I love the weather. I love most everything about the state except the politics of it and just like the economy of it. It's a terrible state to live in. Really, it's one of the worst states to live in as far as like politics and economy and all that. Yeah, so I wish all these teams would actually go to like Boise, because Boise is actually like one of the fastest growing, in fact, I think it's the fastest growing city on the West Coast. And yeah, so I think all the sports teams should kind of move there, because that will also help the city grow. Like all the people who live in Seattle, I don't think they'd really have reason to stick around in Seattle if the Seahawks left and the Mariners and the Sounders and the Sonics whenever we get them back and all of that, you know? So take those teams, move them to Boise, the fans will move with them, and Washington can rot, and hopefully eventually the people in Washington will realize to like quit electing these people, and we'll actually be able to have a fairly decent state-run government and people can move back. Because as it is, I just have no desire whatsoever to ever go down to Seattle. It's destroyed. So even if we do get the Sonics back, it'd kind of be like, I wouldn't really want to go down to Seattle. So anyway, I've talked way too much on this video. So yeah, that is it for this video. I don't think I really have anything else to say. I don't really think there's any major celebrity deaths or anything I have to talk about. I don't want to mention a couple people who I realized are still alive because I'll jinx them. Because so often, you know, you may hear news about someone dies and that you think like, oh, I didn't know they were still alive. But for me, I try to keep track of who is actually still alive. I don't know, it's just something with me. Anyway, I've been talking way too much on this video. I'm so sorry. I don't know how much of it I'll edit out. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you in another video. Bye. 2, 3, 4.